Okay, I want to mention again, as I did earlier today, and as I'm going to be doing certainly until we feel that perhaps it's no longer something we need to do, and hopefully may that be soon. I'm going to just mention warmest thoughts and best wishes to our colleagues and friends in Ukraine, our guides over there who, and the last update I had from Heygo, are all in places of safety with their kids at the moment. So that is good news. Also thinking of our friend, fellow voyager, Olga Kushnir, who is still in Kiev with her elderly grandmother. But as far as we know, she is safe at the moment and is able to take shelter from the raids when they come. So we send our support, our solidarity, and our very warmest thoughts to those colleagues, and hopefully they can stay safe, and hopefully their country can emerge from this, and we can get a peaceful settlement at some stage. Somebody did ask me, you may have seen on Heygo that they have a new category. We have a new category that is hashtag Stand With Ukraine, and tours with this hashtag that people are putting up are related to peace and to places links with Ukraine and all those kinds of things. And I'm going to be doing a tour in that category on Friday at 2 p.m. 2:30 p.m. Sorry, and that's going to be another of my tours in Coventry. Thank you, Anne, for putting the link. Some of you may have joined me a couple of weeks ago and joined that tour about City of Peace and Reconciliation. Seems very appropriate to put up in this category. And all of those, any tips on that particular tour, Heygo is waiving all of its share of the tips for the Stand With Ukraine tours, and my share will also be going to the Red Cross along with theirs to support relief efforts. So that's on Friday, though. Let's think about today's tour, because we want to get away from the news for a little bit. Let's think about, something that's going to hopefully make us happy and bring a bit of lightness to us. We are in Oswestry. Oswestry is an unusual name, and we think the name is derived from Saint Oswald, who was a king of the Kingdom of Northumbria, who was defeated in a battle here by King Penda of Mercia. So fighting between rival small kingdoms before England was one unified nation. And that was around 640 AD. And so we think that Oswald's name is the derivation, the origin of the name of this town, Oswestry. But there's a much longer history here than that. And as we look out from where we are here, you can see a hill in front of us. And that hill is actually known as Old Oswestry. And Old Oswestry is what we call an Iron Age hill fort. Now, we call these earthworks and terraces hill forts, but they're not just settlements. They not just military structures. They were settlements. Iron Age people often sited their settlements on elevated points because they could make sure they would be safe from attack and they could see into the landscape. And this is one of the best preserved Iron Age sites of its kind in Britain. It is often called the Stonehenge of the Iron Age. And it was occupied from around 800 BC until the Romans conquered this part of the world in the first decades of the Common Era, so the first century AD. Later, rulers of this area used those Iron Age earthworks as fortifications because this was an important defensive structure, because we're right on the border with Wales. So Oswestry grew up not as a town. First of all, it wasn't really a town. Up until about 1,000 years ago, it was kind of a border post, a trading post close to the Welsh border. And it was only later that fortifications were created here, and they were created on the spot where I'm standing, because you can see I'm quite high up here. I'm about 15 meters or 50 feet up in the air, which is a natural mound right in the center of town, which is where Oswestry Castle was built about 1,000 years ago. First of all, it would have been timber fortifications that were placed on this natural mound, but later fortifications were extended and rebuilt in stone. Nothing hardly remains. We have a few stone sections here from the medieval castle. These are from around the 12th century. And it was fortified as part of efforts to defend the English border against incursions by Wales, because the Normans took over England in 1066 and they needed to defend what they'd taken over, because some of the Welsh principalities and kingdoms saw this as maybe an opportunity to take advantage of the confusion and move in. And so all the way along the border, you have this string of castles going along there, of which this was one. Now, the people who owned these castles and were responsible for defending this part of the country, they became known as marcher lords. Like that's march, like M-A-R-C-H. Because the border area was known as the Welsh Marchers, and they were marcher lords. And marcher lords were usually very loyal supporters of the king, because he needed someone he could trust in these places. So they tended to be from certain very loyal established families. And because no one really, under normal circumstances, would want to get sent to the most dangerous part of the kingdom, the marcher lords were given quite a lot of leeway. Basically, they could do whatever they wanted. They were the absolute rulers within their own areas. They could levy taxes, they could punish people, they could, run their own justice systems. They had an awful lot of leeway. Of course, that led to some abuses. Dorna, why didn't they use the existing Iron Age fort area? I don't know. I suspect it may well have just been too big, or they couldn't get the materials up there to build. I don't know. It's a much bigger and on a bit different scale to this one. This is about the size that the Norman castles would be built on, either a natural mound, as the motte, as it was called, or they would kind of build one. So this would be kind of about the right size. Okay, so we are these days about, Carol, this is nearer the centre, but there was no centre. There was no town at that time. Okay, so the fact it's near the centre is coincidental. The centre is here because of the castle, not vice versa. There was probably a very small settlement. It was a border post. There was, not really anything of a town to speak of. The town grew up within the outer walls of the castle later, and then started to spread out. So there was some small settlement here, but nothing that would be considered a town that you would build your castle near. The town grew up around the castle. So we are nowadays about 5 miles from the Welsh border, but Oswestry at various times in history has been in England and it's been in Wales. It's passed back and forth throughout the medieval period, has quite a mixed culture, I suppose, and you hear a lot of Welsh accents here in the town. So looking west from here, looking over towards the hills to the west, if you expand the map on your screen, don't really, but you might see, just go to the left, you'll see "Here be dragons," because that's Wales. So Wales is over there too. But this castle was taken by the Welsh in 1148. It was held by a very powerful family in this area called the Fitz-Alan family. They were related to the families that held the castles we visited at Shrewsbury and in Bridgenorth as well, and in Ludlow for that matter, that we're going to be visiting soon. But in 1148, there was a Welsh uprising under a Welsh leader called Madog ap Meredydd. Madog ap Meredydd. Apologies to any Welsh people for my mangling of the Welsh names, but Madog ap Meredydd. That's why I've called this tour Madog's Mound, because he came over here, he took the castle up here on the mound, and he actually extended and improved the fortifications. So these stones we saw up here on the top of the castle mound, they were from his building work, and then later extensions that went on. It was taken back by the English under King John in the early 13th century, and then over the next 200 years it passed back and forth between England and Wales until around 1400, when, after one of the last major Welsh uprisings under Owen Glendower had been put down, it remained solidly in English hands. So it's been in England since the early part of the 15th century. The castle itself was used as a garrison by royalist forces in the English Civil War, 1640s, and it was taken by the parliamentarians, after which they destroyed it, as they did with many royalist strongholds, to prevent it being used in further uprising. It's got a lovely view here, actually, of the two biggest churches in town. The one we're going to talk about in a few minutes here, Christ Church, with the spire near us, and you might just be able to make out the tower a little bit in the distance. That's St. Oswald's Church, which we will see another day, because it's right at the other end of town. Okay, so this castle mound nowadays is a public garden. No, I don't think it's him, MB. I'm not sure though. The one who took this place was Madog ap Meredydd, Maredydd, Meredydd. That was in the 1148. The Glendower Rebellion was around 1400. So this mound was pretty much just a lump of grass and earth here for a couple of hundred years. But in the 1850s, a group of wealthy local businessmen acquired it and made it kind of a pleasure garden for them and their families. I think they were members of a club or something like that. But in 1887, for the Jubilee of Queen Victoria, they donated it to the town of Oswestry. And ever since 1890, it has been a public space, a public park and garden. Dorna, yes, it is very much like the mound at Oxford. Probably very similar function, very similar size, perhaps slightly smaller and slightly less steep. So I'm going down some big steps in a minute. I've done a lot of steps today. I've deserved a good dinner later, maybe pudding as well. But these steps, you see, these are, if there's a big bump on the gimbal when I go down them, look, these are high steps. Always back to ice cream, man. I'm not going to talk to him. I'm just trying at the moment to keep my feet on the ground. Oh, so we're nearly down. This is under the care of English Heritage, which looks after a lot of ancient sites. And when they made this into a public park, they created these gates. And to do that, what they did was to reuse some of the stones. And the gate posts here, you see Oswestry Castle. It was restored again in 2000. But these two, go ahead. No, it's okay, you go ahead. These two stone gates were originally from one of the medieval town gates, and they brought them here to use at the entrance to the new park that they were creating. Okay, so, our tour is called the Mound to Bailey Head, and Bailey Head is the marketplace. It's just on the other side of that building there. But we're not going to go directly there because, won't be a very long tour if we do that. So we're going to take a little look around first. we're going to do a bit of a kind of a lap around the block, and then we're going to go down into the town. Now, the church here is called Christ Church, and it was opened in 1890. So it looks actually a little bit older than that, but it is very Victorian, kind of a Victorian Gothic in style. The interesting thing about it as well is that it's a congregational church, so you'd expect perhaps that to have a more like a chapel, not with a spire. You know, the non-conformist religious denominations, the Methodists, the Baptists, and so on in this country will tend to have chapels rather than churches with spires. But the congregational chapel was built in the style of a much older Gothic type church, and it is quite a large church, about 600 people it holds. I doubt that they need that larger capacity these days. It's the joint church these days. It's of the United Reformed Church and the Presbyterian Church of Wales. So they still have the active church here. It's a beautiful church, I think, though, with these lovely blue doors on the end here. So again, you know, those archways, they look like a medieval church, but 1890. And this church was built to replace a previous one that we will see a little bit later. And it was on the site of the former town jail. Kind of makes sense because the jail would be next to the castle, which used to be there. And the castle up there, we know it must once have been actually quite a grand place, other than just being a very defensive military structure, because several kings are recorded as staying there. And Richard II even held a parliament there. So it must have been, you know, not just a military fortification, but we don't really have big records of it. Hello, Stefan. Nice to see you. Hope you're well. Now, we got a carving here of a man emerging. He was involved with this church by the name of Henry Walford Davis. He was Master of the King's Music. That's kind of a royal appointment. Always goes to a prominent composer or conductor of the particular period. Master of the King's Music to George VI, I believe. And he was also the first musical advisor to the BBC. So a lot of the music played on the early radio stations, he was responsible for either composing it, conducting it, choosing it. One of the things that I love about this town of Oswestry, other than I love the castle, I love some of the buildings, but there's a lot of buildings that are repurposed. There's not a lot of new buildings. There's a lot of repurposing going on, which I love. This is a great example. This used to be another chapel, the Herman Chapel, which was another Welsh chapel, Welsh congregation. But nowadays, the classical style chapel built in 1862, the Welsh Congregational Chapel. So you had the English Congregational Chapel at Christ Church, the Welsh Congregational Chapel here. Nowadays it's an art centre and concert hall. So it's really being used for a great community and cultural purpose. And I think it's really great that these buildings, these old buildings, even if they're not being used for the original purpose, they are actually being retained and they're being used for something that benefits the community. Quite a lot of chapels and churches in Oswestry, but not too many traditional churches, a lot of non-conformist churches and chapels, because they were very strong in this part of the world and over in Wales as well. So the Baptists, the Methodists, the Wesleyans. The church here is a 19th century Baptist church built in 1895 by an architect. His name's got out of my head. He was from Manchester. He came down here. And Faith, an old cider press that's now a house. Oh, I don't know that one. But I love the repurposing of the buildings. So the town grew up as a market town next to the castle because, you know, the castle needs supplying. The troops who are stationed there, the people who were, have various functions within the castle community. And so traders would start to come and supply them, and they set up a market which would take place in the outer parts of the castle complex. And that is what is now the market square of the town where we're going to finish. And over time, of course, the settlement started to grow. And in the 13th century, they built a town wall. Now, nothing remains of that medieval town wall, because it was destroyed like the castle after the Civil War. But one of the gates of it was on this site. So this was the site of the medieval Willow Gate. And this building is named after it. This is social housing built in the 1980s on the site of the former Willow Gate. So they didn't demolish the medieval gate to build this. That had been gone since 1660. And the name of the road, actually, across the way here, is Welsh Walls. So it was basically the walls of the town that were on the Welsh side. The population these days, Marlene, is about 17,000, which makes it actually one of the biggest towns in Shropshire. This county of Shropshire, very rural, very sparsely populated by English standards. One of the biggest counties geographically, but one of the smallest by least densely populated. So, birthplace here, also on this site, in an older building that's no longer here. Barbara Pym, 20th century novelist. I think was voted in a survey a few years ago the most underrated novelist of the 20th century. And wrote things like An Unsuitable Attachment. Arran, the Welsh side, yes, it wasn't just exactly on the border. At several points in its history, it has been in Wales. So it's now 5 miles in England. So Barbara Pym, she was known for writing about social change. She was also known as one of the first writers to write sympathetic portrayals of LGBT characters in her works. She grew up in a house on that site, and her father worked across the way there at the house with the red door, which at that time was the offices of a legal company. Barbara Pym, yes, Tish? Well, that's where she was born, Tish, now you know. So we saw a little carving of Henry Walford Davis, the conductor, on the side of the church, but the blue plaque up there tells us that is where he was born in 1869. And this part of town, we can see, this is kind of the section of town that grew up after the medieval walls had gone, when it was becoming a little bit of a larger market town, when there was peace, so they no longer had to worry about attacks by the Welsh and those kinds of things. And it was also an important place for transportation, because one of the most important routes in Britain, which was the Holyhead Road, which was the coaching road that went from Dover to London, all the way up through the Midlands, and eventually went to Holyhead, where you get the boats over to Ireland. Passes very close to here, and the railways as well. So, that started to boost the trade and the economy. And so we see that in the 18th century buildings along this road. These are all very, very typical 18th century buildings. For example, here you can see 1707 on the building there, and these are certainly, I would say, a little bit later than that. But still older buildings as well, as we get closer towards the centre of the town, because there's a pub here called the Butcher's Arms, which is the oldest pub in town that remains. There were pubs here before 1624, but this is the oldest remaining pub, 1624. And it's been a pub ever since. I think it closed down for a time, but it has been a pub pretty much since then. but it also was a religious meeting place, because in 1672 there was a local dissenting church in the area called the Independent Church of Sweeney, which was, I guess, the person who set it up. And they were given permission by royal appointment. They had to get a permission from the royalty, from the king, to hold their meetings in the upper room of the pub. And for over 100 years, they used the pub for their Sunday services, the upper room of the Butcher's Arms. But in 1750, they decided that they needed their own building because they needed a bit more space. So they built one just at the back of the pub, and it was the first nonconformist chapel that was built here in Oswestry. And it was on the site of the building we see in front of us, which is another great example of repurposing, because the original chapel that they built in 1750 was on this site just behind the pub, but wasn't big enough again. They were a very successful church, but they became absorbed as the Congregational Church. And in 1830, they built this building out of brick. And then in 1870, they added the upper section. You can see the bricks are a slightly different colour. And so this was the Congregational Chapel. And later, they built Christ Church, which is just behind it. We've done a big lap around the block here. And they used this as the Sunday school for education and teaching the kids of the area. Oh, thank you, Tish. Hello, Pam. Nice to have you here. Hope you're well. Hope everything's good over there in Banff. Now, this building didn't stay part belonging to the church. During the 20th century, they decided they didn't need it anymore, and it became a community centre. And about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit less, it was taken over as an independent cinema. So it's now independent cinema called Kino Culture. So those of you who speak German will know Kino is the German word for cinema. And a great little independent cinema known for its comfortable seating, the fact that it doesn't have traditional cinema food. You don't get like popcorn and greasy things. You can order a nice glass of wine or a coffee to be brought to your seat, like all the best independent cinemas. So again, a fantastic repurposing of a building. The house adjoining the old chapel there, between it and Christ Church. This was originally built for the vicar of Christ Church to live at, but it's now office buildings. And opposite Christ Church, we have the library. Now, the library was built in 1890. It was originally a school, a vocational school, so not like a primary school, but it then became a technical college in 1890 when this building here was constructed. In 1959, the library moved here from elsewhere in the town, and the library is still in there to this day. So again, they're making great use of this 19th century building. They needed to expand it a number of years ago, and they also had a problem because, this is a big old 19th century building, wasn't really great for disabled access and for the kind of things they wanted to do in terms of educational facilities and things in a modern library. So in 2008, the new extension, there's a modern building on the back with all of the facilities, great facilities for kids and families and education in the modern library that opened in 2008 there. Okay, so again, another former industrial building is being used as the tourist information. This was a printing shop. It was a residential building first when it was built in the 18th century, later became a printing press for the local newspapers, which supposedly had one of the most sophisticated types of printing press available at the time in the 19th century, which was called the Albion press. It's the most sophisticated kind of newspaper printing press. So the height of technology, but these days being used as the tourist information. Really super friendly, and some lovely little local crafts and produce that you can buy in there. And they're having a really big, they've put a lot of money in this area into boosting tourism to Oswestry in the area. They've had town festivals, and obviously they've been hampered by restrictions over the last 2 years. But the idea is that they're hopefully, now things are opening up, they're going to be able to hold more events and bring more people here to visit, because it's kind of a town that not many people know about, but it's a very varied town. It's got little surprises around every corner. In fact, the slogan that the town is using is historic, surprising, friendly, which is going to be actually the title of my town centre tour that I'm going to do here in a couple of weeks for you. But it is a place where you really come upon some quite unexpected things as you make your way around, and I love places like that. And here is one such example, because we come down through these modern buildings at the back of the library and we walk straight in to a 16th century inn courtyard. The cobblestones, the decorations are from a recent town festival held just a couple of weeks ago. So a lot of the statues and places around the town you see with fabric, coloured fabric decorations on. This is a spa now, this old building here, these old cottages, and I think at one time probably stables at the back of an inn, because it was so close to the main road to North Wales and to the ports for Ireland. Lots of inns here. There are over 100 recorded coaching inns and taverns within the town. And again, look, this is an old, maybe a blacksmith shop, something like that. Looks like it might have been a forge, maybe something like that. But these are really historic buildings tucked away. The other thing they've tried to do is encourage people to create modern public artwork. And one of the big projects for that was in 2011. And the biggest public artwork that was created was a double mural. And one of the things that Oswestry was known for was being having a railway industry. They made rolling stock for some of them. They had a carriage works making railway rolling stock and engines. And they have a heritage steam railway line in the old station here. But in 2011, a local designer called Anna Roberts designed this double mural, painted by a local man called Jim Heath. So here we've got the railway platform.
Hello.
Hello.
What are you up to here?
I'm doing a live stream tour.
For what? Oswestry?
Yes.
Absolutely excellent to meet you, sir.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I told you, friendly place, friendly chaps here.
Very friendly, mate. Lovely to meet you.
You're beaming live around the world, lads. Thank you very much. Have a good day. No, it's live, and you're being beamed around the world.
It's on Facebook?
No. It's a site called Heygo.
Heygo?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Brilliant. Take care, lads. Have a good day. So, got the genuine reproductions of the railway posters here. Delightful holidays on the shores of Cardigan Bay. Station master. These are. You really feel like you're looking out of the train windows at these. But I do always think that the man in the ticket office, the way that his nose is positioned just on the brickwork, he looks like a pig. He's got like, his nose looks like a pig's snout. We look like we're in Animal Farm all of a sudden. But, you know, great things. And then we've got the station building. But as we come around the corner, then you get the main part of the artwork even that Anna Roberts designed. going all the way along the street here on this modern building. Train. All kinds of different people. Let me show you what there is as well. Let me go back to the back because I'll show you. You got dogs, sheepdogs. It's quite a big sheepdog. His head's in that window, his tail's in that window. Got nurses, you've got ladies of leisure. And if you go right to the back, you've got people going to market with their livestock, perhaps. You got a duck. You got a farmer with some lambs there. So I just love this mural. Again, I just think it looks like you're on a platform with the train going along. It's so well done. So well done. Nicole, and it's a A up me duck, yes. Not round here though. And then we get the steam engine. Cambrian Railways was the rail line that was here, and that's the name of the Heritage Railway that's still here. And if my father-in-law were here, he could probably tell me what kind of engine it was. That's great, huh? Look at that. So yeah, I wanted to come down here and show you that. And one of the things that is notable in the town is there are chain stores the same as everywhere else, but there's also a lot of independents. And there's a lot of independent coffee shops and tea rooms and restaurants as well. There's a big cafe culture in Oswestry. Numerous lovely little coffee shops and tea rooms. And they're not open on a Sunday, unfortunately, but if you during the week when you walk down here, so many of the places have got tables outside, great little independent coffee shops, and you've always got something tucked away up these little alleyways. It's great. So again, we've done a little circle here because that's a little cool. Oh, we've got our friends again down there, look. I won't go back up there. So we're heading up this street, which is called Bailey Street. And Bailey was the outer parts of a castle. So a medieval castle, the traditional way that it was designated was a motte and bailey. So a motte was the mound where we started, where you have the big fortification, the keep. It's the central part, the most defensible part of the castle. And then around that you have other courtyards protected by different layers of walls with all of the garrison and the facilities for the castle. And so this tells us that it's a live tour. Hello. Hello. We have the main streets here were once in the outer sections of Oswestry Castle. That's why it's called Bailey Street. And before we go to Bailey Head, which is the name of the marketplace, I just want to show you this lovely little artwork here. So again, this has been covered up because it's normally just, originally it was just bronze sculptures. But we've got a chap drinking, a chap looks like he's hanging upside down texting. And the name of it is below. It's called We're in No Hurry. And it's by Jas Davidson, who is a very well-respected local artist, sculptor and designer. He was actually a designer for most of his life, but sort of later in his career, he went into doing his artwork full time. Jas Davidson here with this lovely work from 2012. So it's part of the same efforts to install public artworks within the town, the same project as the railway murals that we saw. And this is another one. I don't know whether this is Jas Davidson as well. We've got the archer and the person taking cover behind the shield. Robin Hood, but different, yeah. Well, the Welsh archers were very, very well known, in medieval times. Battle of Agincourt was the Welsh archers' finest hour. Hello, Julie, Scottish Highlands. So this market square is called Bailey Head, and dominating it is this building, which is called the Guildhall. And this is the effective town hall and seat of local government of Oswestry. Oh yes, hi Julie. I know you're doing tours up in a beautiful part of the world. So we've got you're a Scottish guide watching an Englishman doing a tour almost on the Welsh border. How about that? We've got a UK effort here. So this Guildhall was built to replace a previous one, and that it was built in 1890. So Linda, it is a big, but I think the Victorian age, they built grand. And if you were in Chester with me earlier on, you remember I talked about a lot of the Victorian work there being done by an architect called Lockwood. Well, he was involved in the design of this building as well. He wasn't the main architect, but he was a kind of a consultant. And it was built in this kind of French Renaissance kind of style. It's very grand. And on the left-hand side, we have a little carving of the man who this town is named after, who is Saint Oswald, or King Oswald of Northumbria, depicted here with a sword in one hand and an olive branch in the other. And this building, which you can see as we get a bit closer, it's got some beautiful carving above the door there. Beautiful stonework carving. Yeah, he's hedging his bets. I think probably the best way. I think that might represent the fact that he was a warrior king and also a saint. I think that's kind of the message it's sending. Oswald, yes, Beatrice, Oswald. So what was in the Guildhall? Well, these days it's the home of the town council, so the local authority. It's got a little theatre in there. It's got rooms that people can book out for functions. It's got the town archives. It's also got a little museum about the history of the town. But at one time, it had a lot more. It had a courtroom. It had the local government chamber and so on. So over the years, its uses have kind of changed. So the market square here in the Bailey of the old castle was where the initial markets were from the 11th, the early 12th century. There's still a market, an open air market on this square twice a week. There's also a very nice the building's not very nice, but the market itself in the indoor market hall there is really excellent. This was also where the punishments would take place. So there's records of, the public whippings going on the market square on the market day. And, it's just been the centre of the town ever since, right up here, still on the high ground. Should pop in the Bailey Head, or I'm not going to pop in the pub with you. We'll never get out. So, Sunday dinner time. All of the shops are closed now. There were a few more people around when I got here earlier. So the shops are still open, and got a lovely pub here. Talking of the pubs, the George, 17th century pub originally, a coaching inn, and more artwork as well. And I want to just finish here around the side of Bailey Head because I love this. This is like as though the pub has windows, and you can see people enjoying a drink, pub cats, people enjoying a bit of live music, which is definitely something that this pub is known for, and enjoying their drinks. And these are great, aren't they? These silhouette images. So we've come full circle. And so brings us to the end of our time together here. And I hope you have had a enjoyable look with me around Oswestry, because, you know, I'm sure it's a place that you might not have ever heard of. It's a place that, you know, is not that well known. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you.